Welcome back to the weekly news or Roundup. This is the Linux edition, and I gotta say, there was not a lot of Linux news this week. So I figured I'd just talk a little bit about the new upgrade to the Raspberry Pi, and we are getting very, very close to putting the Raspberry Pi 5 in full production. I've been testing with it for a while. I've got another week or so. I'm going to test it with the new modification, and as long as that all goes well, then we're going to go ahead and maybe we'll do a video. We need to swap out the power supply, and I'll show you kind of how this guy's mounted up and how these are kind of built into the van walls, because I'm going to need to dismount the 4 and replace it with the 5. Of course, as you can see on the screen, the official Raspberry Pi M.2 Hat has been released. That was released about 2 weeks ago. I picked one up as soon as I could, and I got my guy set up here, and I transferred my data from our test card on the old ON SD card onto a full NVMe 512 gigabyte card. So this guy should last a long time. I used to have to swap out the SD cards once a year. They'd start to get slow and things like that. Now, my Raspberry Pi 5 does have an active cooler down there as well, so this does fit with the active cooler. However, if you look at it, the height for the standard case that I got, it doesn't work well. Now, Canonical has said, I reached out to support, and they said they were actually going to be working right now on a extended height case so that you can actually get it in there. They also did mention, though, that if you can get shorter spacers, you can actually get this guy up there. But to shorten it down enough, you would literally put the hat right on top of the fan. And I'm not sure I would like that, because it just seems as though the active cooler may not do its job. And I do want to keep this guy cool, being as that I do have my my board overclocked. And so I did want to pay attention to that. So with this hat in there, though, it does actually just go right over the tip of the case, if you can see where that is. Let me see if I can do that in there. So you can kind of see that it's just over the tip of the case, and the case itself, I forgot to grab the lid to the case just to show you how it doesn't fit. So if you look at the lid, the case here, then it's going to barely fit. So it's kind of close. What I might actually do is, just for consistency's sake, I might actually just gently tape it down using maybe electrical tape or something, just to kind of keep the case there, to keep as much dust out of this as I can. It works absolutely amazing. It was already fast running MX Linux Cinnamon desktop. It is running absolutely lightning speed at this point in time. Now, as far as putting the data on here, I would have had the option to rebuild the entire system onto the card, but the problem I had with that is I didn't want to have to go back and rebuild and remember all the modifications, and I got my MX Linux build pretty much exactly the way I wanted it anyway, other than migrating the rest of the data. So I did need to get another NVMe chip, and so I went out to Walmart, and at Walmart you can buy this PNY upgrade kit. And the upgrade kit, you just got to check the packaging. The upgrade kit comes with a USB NVMe translator here. And so I actually just bought this mostly for this USB device, because nobody sells this as an independent outside of like Amazon or something, where I would have to wait for it or whatever else. And so this allowed me to get a 1 terabyte NVMe card, which I can use for another project I have coming up. So I got that in there, and then I got the transfer card so I could transfer it. So all I did is I just went into the disks application, and I took a image of the whole SD card, and then I just used disks to translate the image over to the NVMe, dropped it on there, and it worked perfectly flawless. So if you are looking for a very good, very fast microcomputer, low power setting, that thing has been working really well for me as a workstation. I've been doing one of my projects on that, and it is working excellent. The hat itself is like $14. Active cooler, I think, it's under 10, I think. And then the Pi board was $80. and then you had the cost of the NVMe, and you had the cost of the case. So all in all, I have only about $200 in this Raspberry Pi, and it is an amazing workstation for doing basic development work. Obviously, I'm probably not going to be doing a lot of video production on it or things like that, but light graphic design and web design and things like that, the M.2 Hat works. There are other ones that are not official, but I got the official one, so that's very good. Other Linux news, we have Canonical announces the availability of the real-time kernel for Ubuntu 24.04. So this is mostly used for embedded systems. It is also the kernel they use for the Raspberry Pi edition, which is why the Raspberry Pi works so well on Ubuntu, because the real-time kernel, it cuts out a lot of the extra things. You got to remember the kernel itself is full of a lot of stuff, and a lot of those things you don't necessarily need. This is why Gen 2 works better, because Gen 2 basically compiles a custom kernel directly related to your hardware. That's why it works better, but it's not particularly portable. So what the real-time kernel is it's mostly a kernel that's streamlined for IoT headless type devices, and a few modifications just to make it work much faster for smaller scale boards. And so Ubuntu now has this in, and there's another article I just saw out today. I think it was on, I saw it on Twitter, aka X or whatever they're calling it. Sorry, I dead name. It's called Twitter, and it forever will be. Sorry, Elon. But you can actually just install it very simply, and it's going to work really well for whatever devices you're using it on. So there you go. You have a real-time kernel available for Ubuntu. And finally, Rufus fixes the persistent creation. This is interesting because I've been talking a little bit more about persistence as we look at how to test out Linux without interfering with your regular computer. And so the problem, of course, with Rufus, as we had said in our chat here before we started, Rufus is not available for Linux, which sucks. But you can, if you're on Windows and you want to try out Linux, you can use Rufus to not only burn an ISO onto a flash drive, you can also create a persistent partition, meaning that you can do things on that drive and save it for the next boot up. Now, if you are on Linux, there's an application called, I think it's called USB Make or something, and it does allow you to do something very similar. Now, I know that the USB Make does not allow you to encrypt your persistent drive. I don't know if Rufus has that option or not. So that is, it's sad that you can't encrypt it, but I do actually have footage for how to create a drive with persistence using Linux. So if that footage is good enough, I will release that in a video sometime soon. But if you are looking at Rufus and you knew there was an issue, they have now fixed the persistent issues, so you can now officially use Rufus to use Ubuntu, Linux Mint, or Debian USB installers with persistence going forward. And so this is in Rufus 4.5, so look for that. And then, of course, sadly, it is only a Windows application, which is bummer. So Rufus, you need to change and get yourself a Linux copy. Of course, they probably don't, because a lot of distributions have USB burners. However, not all of them allow you to create persistent drives. There's only that one, which I've read about in the documentation for Linux Lite. So that's actually what I used to create a persistent drive on a prior video. Well, if you want to help support the channel, we do have a locals page, switchedtolinux.locals.com. You can jump on over there. Of course, we do have our short story series, which I have finished the short story for the month. I'm going to delay releasing it until we have the audiobook version done, which I'm going to hopefully have this week. We're going to shoot for early this week, but I finished the story. I ran it through my editors. I really liked the story, and so we'll go ahead and get that guy released into the audiobook format as soon as we can, and then that will be released. That'll be the last book until probably September. I'm going to be taking all of those short stories and compiling them. Of course, you can jump onto Locals or any of our other support networks. You can always go back into the archive and read the old stories. The audiobooks are only valid for a month, the audiobook links, although I'll probably make the full compiled audiobook available to everybody again once I have that done. Also, the one was supposed to be good until today, and we discovered last night that the link was not working. So if you did not get a chance to get the audiobook and you are a supporter, let me know. I might go ahead and throw that up there for another couple weeks just to give everybody a chance to grab a copy of last month's. So if you still need that, just shoot me an email or a message on the supporter platform, and I'll take care of that. With that, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.